if you're alert and you're smart, alert meaning you notice things and you're smart and you learn, living life itself is the lesson. So a version of what you just asked is, given what you know today, what would you tell yourself if you met yourself when you were 15, 20, 25, 30, whatever? And I said, I wouldn't tell him anything. Because if I gave a bit of wisdom, I said, you're about to do that, but don't do that. Okay? There's no better lesson than doing something and learning that you shouldn't do it. That's the best lesson. We don't live life because there's a list of things that other people said don't do. You're going to explore your life. That's what you're going to do. And some things are great and some things you don't want to do again. Some things you're bad. That's where the wisdom comes from. You earn it.
If you met your younger self, would you offer a warning? Neil deGrasse Tyson wouldn't. In fact, he thinks that spoils the whole point of living. For him, life isn't about dodging mistakes with borrowed wisdom. It's about making them, feeling them, and growing from them. That's where real understanding comes from. You don't gain wisdom by being told what not to do. You earn it by doing it anyway and learning the hard way. Tyson reminds us that life isn't a guidebook. It's an exploration. And sometimes, the wrong turns are the parts that shape us most. Let's dive into Tyson's expository clips, where he reminded us that experience, even rough-edged, is the universe's sharpest teacher. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
For me, knowing I'm going to die gives meaning to my remaining life. Whereas if I'm never going to die, then mathematically, that would mean I'd lead a life of no meaning at all. Because there's no way to focus an infinity amount of time into anything and have it be meaningful. So I'm taking mortality as a very serious force operating on happiness, productivity. Can you do something for the world? And on my tombstone, what I want it to say is a quote from Horace Mann: "Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity." I want to have made a difference in the world. I want the world to have been better off because I lived in it. Is that too much to ask of any of us? Really? We're all capable of good deeds. So if the world is better off, I've played my part as a citizen of planet Earth. Yes, the universe is huge in size, in age, in contents. There's nothing we can put on the table that can rival those measurements that we make of the universe. However,
how big?
Well, there's the light from the most distant galaxies has been traveling for nearly 14 billion years. 10 billion years more than Earth has even existed, if you want to get a sense of that. And so, but think about it a whole other way, that if you look at the ingredients of life, not just human life, but life on Earth, and you can rank the elements. What's the number one element in life? We could mention the human body. The number one element is hydrogen. That's contained in the H2O of the water content of your body, which, depending on how chubby you are, can anywhere from a half to 3/4 of your body weight is water. And all right, what's the next most abundant element in your body? It's oxygen attached to the water. Okay, H2O, and both the H and the O appear in many, many other molecules in our body, in the DNA and in your muscle tissue, all of this, and in the blood. Okay, what's third? Carbon, which you would have thought had to be somewhere on the list because you know we're carbon-based life. Fourth is nitrogen. Okay. Fifth, I'll put them all together and just say other. Okay. So that's the sequence of elements. And now you say, what are the sequence of elements in the universe? The number one is hydrogen. The number two is helium, but that's chemically inert. You might remember from high school chemistry. You can't do anything with it anyway. Helium. Next in the universe, oxygen. Next, carbon. Next, nitrogen. Next, other. Okay, so we are one for one matched to the ingredients of the universe. And one of the gifts of 20th century astrophysics is gifts to civilization is where those ingredients came from. We trace those ingredients, the hydrogen, to the Big Bang itself, and all these heavier elements to stars that manufactured those elements in their core, in the crucible that is their core. They lived out their lives. They exploded, scattered that enrichment into gas clouds so that the next generation of stars would have planets, and on at least one of them have life as we know it, life on Earth. So that you can think of us not just figuratively, but literally composed of stardust. And so that it's not that we are alive in the universe. Yes, that's true. But the universe is alive within us. So we're special because we're the same as the universe. Often when people think they're special, I want to be different from it. No, we're the same because we have human DNA on an Earth where we have DNA in common with all other animals, all other life forms on Earth. Do you realize we and mushrooms have more in common with each other than either we or mushrooms have with green plants? The common ancestor between fungus and animals split later in the tree of life. Then its common ancestor split with green plants. You have 20% identical genes to a banana. When you consider all of this, it's not just that we're alive in the universe is alive within us. And that discovery borders on the spiritual.
Yeah.
And it's a scientific result. So when I look up at night, I never feel small. I feel large. I feel as large as the universe itself, because that's where we came from. We're a participant in a great unfolding story of cosmic evolution. We're not good at feeling oneness with everyone. It's easy to feel oneness with our tribe. Our tribe could be skin color, religion, who you sleep with, who you don't sleep with, what food you eat, what rituals you perform. And so those people choose sides based on so many factors that it's actually, to me, just as a scientist, it's disturbing how easily and quickly we will divide each other and make that the reason for how you interact, rather than see what we have in common and make that the reason for why we would come together. The best way to ask that is, let's go back to the earliest humans we have fossil records of. And we can go back to Neanderthal, for example. Neanderthal is a branch of hominids that went extinct, basically. There's some crossbreeding, and there's Neanderthal DNA in many humans today. But as a branch of the hominids, they went extinct. So the Neanderthal, then there's Cro-Magnon. We are Homo sapiens coming after Cro-Magnon. And so when you look at burial grounds, the Neanderthal buried their dead with things, with parts of their life, of the person who died. Now, why would you do that unless you had some belief that there was something more to come for that person? I mean, probably the people who took it to the limit were the Egyptians, all right? For the Egyptian royalty, I mean, they bury you with all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And in fact, in Greece, I read this. It's not that I researched it, and I'm not a scholar in this, but that when they buried you, they put a coin in your mouth or in your hand, somewhere on your body, so that when you got into Hades, you can tip the ferry boat driver to cross the river Styx to get into Hades. You might even say that's the beginning of what it was to be human, when people started thinking that way about dying. I mean, you might even invert the question and say, it's not when did we start, it's we existed in all the ways we know what ourselves to be when that ritual came upon our ancestors. We're pretty sure there's a survival benefit of groupthink. And religion is groupthink, if there ever was. It was, we will all believe this in this way, and we will behave in that way on those occasions, and you will not deviate from it. And part of that package of beliefs includes statements about the afterlife and how you should behave in this life. Otherwise, you don't go to heaven, you go to hell. I don't think Judaism has a hell, but you're not as rewarded as you'd otherwise be. Now that forms a corpus of beliefs that can be highly binding of a people's. And especially if some other peoples come up and they do other things and you don't understand it, you don't know what it is, and they're a threat. And so you keep them out. You do whatever you can to preserve your traditions relative to theirs. Ultimately, that in its worst manifestation is all-out war, where you just kill people who don't believe the way you do. So maybe religion is kind of what defined humans in the fossil record. I mean, like I said, that's an interesting inversion of that question. Not when did humans begin being religious. You define who we are as humans as when religion showed up in the burial grounds of cavemen.
You just talked about us being bound there by certain shared beliefs and ideas.
Yes,
and I think
I think ritual is one of the strongest binding forces of society that we have.
Mortality isn't a curse. It's the spark. The awareness that time is running out pushes us to live with urgency, to care deeply, and to try to matter. You can't stretch infinity into meaning, but you can compress a finite life into impact. That's the paradox, and it gets even more surreal when you realize the atoms in your body are ancient, born in the cores of stars. According to Tyson, you're not just part of the universe. You are the universe, conscious of itself. That's not something to shrink under. That's a reason to rise, to contribute, to make this brief life count. Let's hear more from him.
There have been studies about the psychological effects of this kind of life, basically the social media too early in one's life force that operates. But I don't know. I don't want to be the person who says, in my day, we did it right. And you youngins don't know what you're doing. And you're all going to, I mean, I've seen the films of officials smashing pinball machines with sledgehammers saying it will be the death of the next generation because they're not studying. It's gambling. You've seen people burning rock and roll records. You know, we've seen this. And I don't want to be that guy. I'd rather be the person that says they're going to create a whole other reality that was not my reality growing up. And I don't know that I can or should value judge that. When they come up in the ranks, they'll be mature adults. They'll figure out what the rhythms are of that world. And I will say, however, that if you go far enough back, no one ever traveled anywhere. You'd spend your whole life not going more than 30 miles from your hometown, a couple hundred years back. So now people do actually communicate with countless thousands of people around the world. So it's different. I'm not value judging it, but it's different. And you're exposed to different ideas. Maybe it tribalizes you more, or maybe it softens you. It has the power to do both. What concerns me is because when I post to social media, I've learned the art of not expressing an opinion. Because I don't care what your opinion is. I don't care that you have my opinion. What I care about as an educator, and especially as a scientist, is that your opinion is based on objective reality, objective truths. If you have an opinion where the foundation of it is, what? Then you're just floating. There's no, and then if you rise to power of laws and legislation, and then you shape a society based on what you think is true or want to be true rather than what is objectively true, that's a recipe for the unraveling of civilization as we know it. So this loneliness bit, I don't know how to comment on that. I don't have the expertise, but I do know that I don't want to be the person on the rocking chair. Get off my lawn. My father was 89 when he died. That was 5 years ago. My mother was 2 days shy of her 95th birthday. So so I'm putting myself like right between them in my life expectancy. I think I'll get to 92. It's the average of those two, So when you die at that age, it's sad, but it's not tragic. So that's an important distinction for me. A tragic life is a life that could have been lived, but through act of war or negligence or negligence of the person or of others, the life is cut short. Then that's tragic. It's a life not fully lived. But if you lived a full life, they were married 50-something years, it's sad, but it's not tragic. In fact, it's not even sad. It's something to celebrate. And so I miss them. I miss them more than I thought I would, because they carried quite a bit of wisdom with them. My father was active in the civil rights movement. My mother was a gerontologist. So they both cared very deeply about the plight of others. And I'm their son, the astrophysicist. So I go off with my head in the sky, but I was anchored into the human condition and anchored to think about it, to care about it. And when I encountered things in modern life, I wonder what my mother would say about that. I wonder what insights my father, and they're not there. I don't have them for that. So the way it's changed me is, it has put a greater expectation of me on myself to make sure I have wisdom that I can share with my kids, my two kids, the kind of wisdom that I gleaned from my parents, so that, again, this is not wisdom of what car to buy or what job to have, because they have other values. They have other expectations of society. But in terms of human-to-human interaction, in terms of love, in terms of challenges in life and overcoming them, some of those are timeless. Some of those are, how to navigate difficult people, how to appreciate nature so you don't take it for granted. One of the things I liked about Joyce Kilmer's poem on a tree is about a tree. And we've all seen trees. So why does this matter? Because it takes an artist, a poet, a writer, a sculptor, a painter. For me, the artist's job is to encourage us, stimulate us to pay attention to things we might otherwise take for granted. Because so much of life is what you might just walk by and not even give it any thought. And so I don't walk by trees without thinking something about that poem.
What is the poem?
I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowering breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who ultimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can can make a tree. What choice do I have? No, if you don't have free will, then you don't even have an option to say you don't. So you just live life. Just live your life so that the world is better off for you having lived in it.
And what does that mean for you?
It means people are better off. The institutions are better off. People are happier, healthier, wealthier, safer, better fed. That rationality matters in politics and lawmaking. And that will help to ensure stability of anything you build going forward. But yeah, that's all I mean. It's not complicated. And you were talking about meaning before. I stopped looking for meaning decades ago because I realized we, any of us, has the power to make meaning in life. If you're going to look for meaning, are you looking under a rock, behind a tree? It's as though meaning is sitting there waiting for you to find it. Oh, I found meaning. There it is. Now my life is complete. That feels so powerless on your own destiny. Whereas I make meaning. I want to learn something today that I didn't know yesterday. I want to lessen the suffering of someone today compared with however that person was living yesterday. I want to use what I learn to well up within me and manifest as wisdom. Because information is not really useful until it becomes knowledge. And then knowledge is good. You can show off if you have a lot of knowledge. That's what these game shows do. But in the end, the best use of knowledge is when it becomes wisdom. And wisdom, people say, oh, I don't like getting older. I want to be young again. I don't want to be young again. When I was 30, I was an idiot. Even when I was 30, I thought I was brilliant, right? So don't get older unless you have wisdom to show for it. It's when you don't have something to show for your age, you want to be younger. You're just getting old with nothing to show for it. But I continue to learn things every day, passively and actively. Passively is you just notice, open your eyes sometimes and see what's happening, where things are headed, what they're doing. You learn. Not all things you learn are good. And if they're bad or need adjustment or need help, do something about it if you can. So that's how I derive meaning. Hence my tombstone. Be ashamed to die unless you've scored some victory for humanity. There's the meaning for you.
We live in a world overflowing with noise. Every day brings a new trend, a new outrage, a new reason to feel overwhelmed. Social feeds move faster than thought, and most of what we consume barely stays long enough to matter. But beneath all of that speed and noise sits a quieter question that refuses to disappear. What are we actually doing with the time we have? That question becomes harder to avoid as we get older. Meaning isn't something the world hands you. It isn't waiting on a shelf somewhere, ready for you to stumble across it. It's something you build slowly, intentionally, through the choices you make and the values you commit to. Real meaning grows out of curiosity, compassion, effort, and the willingness to improve not just yourself, but the lives you touch. It isn't about perfection. It's about direction. Our culture often celebrates knowledge, but knowledge alone doesn't change anything. Wisdom does. Wisdom comes from living, from failing, from paying attention, from letting life teach you things that no textbook or tutorial ever could. Wisdom gives substance to your years. Without it, age is just a number. Legacy isn't about accomplishing something enormous. It's about living in a way that leaves the world slightly better than you found it. Maybe that means easing someone's burden, mentoring someone younger, being a voice of reason when everyone else is shouting, or choosing kindness when it feels inconvenient. These moments add up. They accumulate quietly, shaping a life that actually mattered. So don't wait for meaning to appear. Create it. Live deliberately. Notice the world around you. Learn something new. Help someone who needs it. Let your experiences turn into wisdom, and let that wisdom anchor the way you move through the world. That is how a life becomes meaningful. As we wrap up, ask yourself, if your life had a tombstone quote, what would it be? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.